Hello, scholars, parents, families. Welcome all to another math lesson. This time we are doing distributive property and the associate property with me, Mr. Dennerin, the math master. So, going right into the work. Distributive property and associative property, two properties that we will investigate and explore today with multiplication. The key vocabulary for today's lesson will be factor, product, decompose, break apart, split, split up. All right, that's all the same word. So I may say decompose, I may say break apart, I may say split up. They all mean the same thing. Part, expression, equation, and parentheses. Okay. All right. So going to our first one, the distributive property. There's no example here because I'm going to put the examples right here on the board. The distributive property. So let's say we can use the distributive property to solve for bigger multiplication facts. All right, right. What is 6 times 9? I came from that old school where I knew this like the back of my hand and knew it was 54. But we're also building up that conceptual part of multiplication using smaller expressions or smaller fast facts to find out what is 6 times 9. So that means I can break up either my groups or I can break up my items. First, let's explore breaking up the groups. I'm going to break up or decompose my groups um, into two parts, all right? 4 and 2. All right, 4 and 2 are my two parts I'm breaking up this into. Now, these two parts that are broken up into is I'm going to multiply them times 9. So you have, all right, which you should have parentheses 4 times 9, close parentheses, all right, plus, the reason why we're doing plus because we broke this up into two parts, 4 plus 2, plus parentheses 2 times 9. Boom. Now we're here. Now we have to solve both the parentheses first. 4 times 9, 36. 2 times 9 is 18. We have this plus sign in the middle. Now we got to figure out what they equal. I tell the kids, always make our place value chart. All right, it's okay to make our place value chart. 36 plus 18, 5, that's 14. Carry the 1, 1 plus 3 plus 1 is 5. 54, that's our answer, 54. So we broke down the groups. We can do the same thing. We're also breaking down our items. So when I'm talking about breaking down groups and items, I'm going to rewrite that again. Groups and items, these are groups. That means you have six groups of 9, right? So now let's break down our items. I want to break this down into 5, and I want to break this down into 4. All right? We broke this down into two parts, 5 and 4. Now we're going to multiply. 6 times 5. See that? Plus 6 times 4. Sorry about that. So now we broke down that 9 to two parts. I can break it down to any parts I want to. All right? Now, 6 times 5, that's 30. 6 plus 6 times 4, 24. Now we go back, put this in our place value chart. 30 plus 24. What does that give us? 4, 5. And there we go. All right. That's our distributive property. There's another way that we can break down distributive property that the scholars do learn. All right. So one key takeaway with distributive property is that, yes, we're still multiplying, but we have an addition sign. Somewhere in distributive property, you will have an addition sign. All right. Because we're breaking up those factor into parts. Right. So let's say another way we can do 6 times 9 is I want to break this up into 3 and 3. Right. I can also say 3 plus 3 times 9. This is also distributive property. Why? Because when we have this addition sign and we broke this 6 up into parts, 3 and 3, 2 parts, 3 parts plus 3 parts equals 6 total parts. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also show the distributive property with a quick model. All right, I'm not going to do nothing too big, nothing too crazy, just a quick model to show how how this equation and this equation is shown in my model. All right, I want to investigate 4 times 5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make an array. I'm going to make an array. I'm going to use my groups. I'm going to use my rows as the groups. I'm going to use my rows as the groups. So I'm going to make my rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are my 4 groups, right? Now I'm going to put 5 in each group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have a total of 20 circles. All right. Now, let's investigate just breaking down this part right here into 2 and 2. All right. We're going to break this down into 2 and 2. I'm going to break my 4 groups up into 2 groups. So all I can do is split right down here. That's one group. That's my second group. Now what I'm going to do is I have now made 2 expressions. My first expression is I have 1 group, 2 groups, parentheses, 2 groups times what? I'll give you 5 seconds to think about that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 5. Yes, if you said 5, you are correct. 2 times 5. Now I'm going to go and solve this second, make this expression for the second group. Even though it says 3 and 4, I'm not going to get confused. I'm going to count how many groups I got. 1, 2, or how many rows I got. 1, 2. So that's 2. Parentheses, 2 times how many is in each group? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? 2 times 5 equals 2 times 5, that's 10. Remember, we have to add in the middle. All right. 2 times 5, that is 10. 10 plus 10 is 20. Yep. That's distributive property now, breaking down the groups. We're going to do one more, and we're going to break down the items, right, using the same expressions. I'm going to break this down into 3 and 2. Still going to use those same rows, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now we're going to put 5 in each group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I said I wanted to break it down into 3 and 2, right? So this is how I'm going to break it down to 3 and 2. And when I went across this last time, I did the groups. I'm going to break the items. So I broke my items into 2 groups, and I made now 2 new expressions. Now my groups stayed the same. I still have 4 groups. I never split those groups. So in this first expression, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 groups times how many is in each group? 1, 2, 3. Parentheses, parentheses, plus. Now again, my group still stayed the same here. I still have my 4 times my 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2 in each group. Okay? Now, 4 times 3, that is 12, plus 4 times 2, that is 8. We add that up, plus 8 is 20. Our answer is 20. That is the distributive property, right? You see how we break down our groups, we break apart our groups into two parts. We break apart our groups and break down our groups into two parts. And that is our big understanding of distributive property. We're gonna do one more example and then we're gonna go to associative property. Okay, now I wanna find out 7 times 8, all right? We can break down the distributive property. We can break down either or. We can break down the groups or we can break down the items. Let's explore breaking down the items. We're going to break down into 4 and 4, all right? Because, 4 plus 4 gives us 8. Now we got to make our two expressions. First expression, 7 times 4 plus. Remember, we're using distributive property. We kept one factor. We never changed a factor. Now we go over here. Same thing again. 7 times 4. Bow. All right? Remember, the 4 is here, and the 4 is here. And we just brought our 7 down and kept the 7 the same. Now, 7 times 4, 28, plus 28. Now, what must we do? Remember, distributive property has an addition sign in the middle. So now we have to solve 28 plus 28. 8 plus 8 is 6. Carry the 1, 2, 2, 1, 5. 56 is our answer. And that right there is our distributive property. Take one last good look at that, because now we're going to, again, at this time, I'm going to give us a few seconds, pause, look at it, rewind if we need to rewind, freeze if we need to freeze, because we're going to the associative property. Now, we are ready to go to the associative property. Disregard. Now, the associative property. See, the associative property is different from the distributive property because we are not essentially breaking down numbers into parts. Let's say I want to explore 3 times 3 times 2. We have the parentheses, all right? We have our parentheses. We always want to solve in our parentheses first. 3 times 3 is 9 times 2 equals 18. So now the big understanding kids need to have for the associative property is that no matter how many times I change these factors around, I'm always going to get 18. I can move the parentheses. I'm always going to get 18. The big understanding with the reason why the associative property works like that is it's always using the same factors, number one. Two, it's using the same operation of multiplication. So what I mean by is that if I did 3 parentheses times 3 times 2, I'm still going to get 18, even if I solve these parentheses first, right? 2 times 3 is 6 times 3. 3 times 6 is 18. What if I change the factors around, right? And change the factors into different factors, right? What if I make the factors, what if I put 2 first? 2 times 3 times 3, put the parentheses here. This still 2 times 3, 6 times 3 equals what? 18. Big idea and big understanding for that. Associative property will use always, every single time, will use the same factors and it has to have the same operation. So we're gonna also look into and investigate the difference between the associative property and the distributive property in one more slide. So let's do one last one with the associative property again, right? So with the associative property, let's say I want to do 4 times 3 times 5, right? Parentheses, parentheses. And I'm also saying that this is also equal to 4 times 3, parentheses, times 5, parentheses. So let's look at this side first. So always solve inside the parentheses first. 4 times 3 is 12. Then we bring down that 5. 12 times 5 is equal to what? 60. Next one. Solve inside the parentheses first. 3 times 5 is 15. 4 times 15 is what? 60. That's the associative property. Associative property is we're using the same factors, all right? No matter what we switch the factors around, we're going to get the same product, all right? But we need to use the same operation when it comes to the associative property of multiplication. Now, one big push that I'm going to be pushing scholars in is, can we use the associative property to figure out bigger fast facts? So meaning, for example, I want to know, can I use the associative property to find out this fact right here? 6 times 7, right? 6 times 7 equals 42. Can I use the associative property? Yes, I can. But the key thing is, when I break down the 6, I need to break the number down by its factors. I need to break the number down by its factors. All right, so what that mean is, last time in the distributive property, I did 4 and 2. 4 and 2 add to 6, but I need 4 times 2 don't equal 6. So I need to change that to 3 and 2. If I'm using the associative property, because I'm using multiplication, and the associative property uses all multiplication. So now we have 3 and 2. So we can write 3 times 2 times 7, parentheses, parentheses. Do something a little different, right? 2 times 7 is 14. Bring down the 3. 3 times 14 is 42. If I switch it around, which is also equal to 3 times 2 times 7, parentheses, parentheses. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 times 7 equals 42. So the big takeaway is, you can also use associative property to find out bigger fast facts you don't know. But the key thing is, they need to break the numbers down by factors. While distributive property, we did it by parts. 4 plus 2, there's 2 parts, equals 6. Associative property, you need to use the factors. Okay, now one last slide where we just look at the difference between the two properties. Now, sorry about that. Pardon, technical difficulties. Smart board got a mind of his own. Guess it's not smart. You see what I did there? Okay, so now looking at the difference between associative, distributive property and associative property, we have a verse. I'm gonna split it right down the middle, right? Okay, so for distributive property, we said, let's say 6 times 8, we break up our groups. So we do 4 and 2, make our new expression, parentheses 4 times 8 plus 2 times 8. That's distributive. Associative property, we can say 3 times 2 times 8. This is distributive property. Also, we can show a distributive property this way too as well. 4 plus 2 times 8. Remember, distributive property, you break up into parts, and part, using the vocabulary part, is a operational signal for addition and subtraction. In this case, it's just addition because we broke it into parts. So this is distributive property, this is associative property. Also, again, we explored how we can use associative property to figure out bigger fast facts. So if you didn't catch on, this is actually equal to this. Yep, this is actually equal to this because 6 times 8. I broke up this 6 into factors, right? Factor pairs. 3 times 2 equals 6. You see the difference? Distributive property, distributive property, distributive property. We break down into parts and use addition. Associative property, the associative property, we break up into factors. When I'm using that word factors, that means I'm using multiplication, and we use one operation throughout. So this is our big difference between distributive property and associative property. One, we break down and distribute to the other factor with addition. Associative property, we can break up if we want to, if we choose to, we will explore more, we can break up into factors, right, to find out bigger factors. And we use all multiplication. As you can see, it's all multiplication, all right, and using the same factors. On the distributive property, we're using multiplication, addition, and multiplication. Multiplication, solve the parentheses first, then add. And then also on the second way. Addition, you can add 4 plus 2, which gives us that 6, and then multiply. So that is the big difference between the distributive property and the dissociative property. Drop a like, drop a comment. If you like more videos, thumbs up, and request more videos because we will be exploring more, especially this associative property, breaking up other factors into factors to multiply. And maybe we're going to visit the conceptual understanding of the associative property. Thank you. Have a nice night.